Hey everyone, I'm Mark DeGrasse, and you're listening to the AI Branding Podcast, where we talk everything branding, marketing, content, and using AI in practical terms to put it all together. So today I have a very special guest, Jonathan Mast. I actually saw him speak recently at the Commitment Summit from our friends, The Heights, and he did a fantastic job basically summarizing kind of key uses and key platforms for AI, and he's a prolific content creator, which I am an enormous fan of. If you follow me at all, so I'm very happy to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we already started it right before the show where we started
I
having a big
always,
discussion on
yes.
on platforms. But I figured today, since you're very good at kind of getting people introduced to AI, we could kind of talk about maybe just the ways that businesses can practically start to apply AI, not just to marketing, but just in general, to get a
Yeah.
feel for it.
No, I'd be happy to. I'd love that. As you know, I believe most people overcomplicate AI, and it keeps people from getting involved in it. And certainly, you can make it incredibly complicated. I don't mean to say you can't do that, but I think for the average business owner looking at this, it's so easy to use AI to save time, both for themselves as the owners, but also for their teams. And if you run some simple numbers and just say, let's just say hypothetically, we could only save everybody on our team 30 minutes a day. That would be 2.5 hours a week on a 40-hour work week. And over the course of a year, now all of a sudden we're talking over 100 hours, basically almost 3 full weeks of additional productivity that we could get. Or if our staff is overworked, maybe it's just 3 weeks of the fact that they get to breathe once in a while. So they do a better job on what we do. But ultimately, I believe, can do far more than that. But even that simple type thing can lead to such huge value for your business by starting to embrace it and figure out where do we implement it so that we can save some time, we can improve our profits, and hopefully serve our clients better along the way.
Oh, I love that concept because yeah, like you said, it's like people massively overcomplicate it. And I also think they overestimate it in a lot of ways
Yeah.
because, people think it's just, oh, I'll just put in a thing like make me a marketing campaign and then all the content and ads and are just going to be spit out. It's like, yeah, you can find an AI to do that, but that requires way more, coding essentially.
Well, and it's not going to be probably reflective of your audience at that point in time or anything else. I mean, this is no different than, 2 years ago, Mark, as we know, before AI came out as it is today. I mean, there was AI, but, we could have hired a copywriter from overseas and we could have paid him $30 and we could have got an entire marketing campaign. Wouldn't have worked, but we could have done that and got an entire marketing campaign. And you can do that with AI. And I think that's maybe where a lot of businesses start and why sometimes they don't have a great impression. Because if you just go to ChatGPT, one of the major players, and you go, write me an email marketing campaign so I can sell my widget, you're going to get an email marketing campaign. It's not going to be a good one. It's not likely to be very effective, but you'll get an email marketing campaign. And then when the owner reads that and goes, well, that really wasn't very good. I don't think this is going to save me much time. I think what you're saying makes so much sense. If they would realize this isn't about the easy button from Office Max or Office Depot, whoever
Mm.
puts that out, that it's not a silver bullet. But if we could take what currently takes us 4 hours and turn it into an hour, what does that mean for our team? What does that mean for our business? I just rewrote a webinar yesterday, and in a year ago, it probably would have taken me 4 to 6 hours to go through and rewrite it. I already had it done, but I had to update it and rewrite it. I literally was able to do that in under an hour, and it probably turned out better than what I would have done a year ago because I've trained the AI on my tone and my style and what I do. And yeah, all that took a little bit of time, but it's like hiring a new employee for your business. If you hire a brand new employee, you don't expect them on day one to know everything about your organization and be able to hit the ground. Okay, maybe we expect it, but realistically, it's not going to happen. And AI, in my mind, is like hiring that other employee. The only difference is it's $20 a month. You're not going to get an employee that's capable of doing as much for $20 a month. And they can
Yep.
do a lot to save you time. And you mentioned what are some of the things? I mean, brainstorming is one of my favorite.
Mm.
Writing emails. I absolutely love writing emails. dealing with contract review. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I'm sure an attorney would hate this, but I got an NDA the other day, and it was like 8 pages long. I'm like, who in the world wrote an 8 page NDA? I know my ADD mind didn't want to read the entire 8 page NDA, so I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I told him what it was about, and then basically said, what are the risks that I am assuming by signing this NDA? And within 20 seconds, it came back and identified all the key things. It's like, oh, well, most of it's boilerplate. This isn't. Well, now I get to go read that section. And reading a paragraph, that's not a big deal. But reading 8 pages seemed like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro to me. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh,
Impossible.
I don't have time to read 8 pages and it makes sense. But when it turned into 7 to 8 paragraphs and then a quick review that I could scan the document and go, okay, this does look okay other than these areas, that saved me probably at least an hour, if not a few hours, and or saved me the risk that I just signed it like I probably would have done a couple years ago and
Mhm.
said, oh, it can't be that bad. And you cross your fingers and you hope everything turns out. When in reality, there were a few things that I needed addressed. And I said, hey, this is wrong and I need to address this. This is unfair. And guess what? They said, oh, no, yeah, that was all boilerplate. We'll take that out. No problem. But had I not had AI, none of that would have happened. So,
Oh,
those are just some quick things. Again, it's like emails. How many times have we had an email we needed to write, maybe to a staff, maybe to our client, maybe to a vendor, and we didn't take the 20 minutes we should have to think how to say it nicely and effectively. And so we spent 5 minutes on it and we got an okay email. Well, now with ChatGPT and the other tools, I can literally take that email that I got that I need to respond to, copy and paste it in and say, here's essentially what I want to say. Will you help me write a great email? And you'll be 95 to 98% of the way there in under 10 seconds. It's far easier for me to then edit that email. And now in maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I'm done. And again, I have a better email than what I would have had a week ago before I started using AI.
I love that. Yeah, because you kind of combine, practical uses through things you get hung up on, and then the startup process. But I also love how you mentioned
Exactly.
with the contracts, where it's kind of like, hey, I don't have time to review this. Give me the bullet points. Like, what are the risks? And actually, I was going to put out this article, and I was like, I don't know if I should say that, but there's a lot of these credit card companies that have these massive contracts, and if you
Oh,
really have
yeah.
a problem, you could just feed it into AI and say, what are the most likely reasons why the company that issued this contract would be violating it? And then just have it spit out all the reasons how they probably violated their own contract.
Absolutely. Well, and again, we're talking data analysis, and every business owner needs to do data analysis. The problem is most of us don't have enough time in the day either. I mean, there are exceptions, but let's face it, the gurus out there are selling it on how we as business owners can live the lifestyle we've always dreamed of by not working all day long.
Mhm.
And one of the ways to do that, or to help at least down that path, is to start embracing the AI tools and using it. And the beauty, I mean, Mark, you know all this, but because of the fact that I've got apps on my phone, it's as close as having a professional consultant and advisor in my pocket. And in many cases, depending on where you're at in your budget, that advisor that you get from ChatGPT is probably going to be as good or maybe even better than what you're paying for right now in many cases, especially if you're willing to do a couple simple things like ask me any clarifying questions you have before you give me a response. I
Oh,
was just on a call and it was amazing. And they're like, you actually do that. You like say, I need to write this email and blah, 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 and ask me any clarifying questions first. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, does it matter? And I'm like, well, absolutely, because I don't always remember what information AI needs. I don't remember what information my assistant needs. How am I going to remember what information my AI needs? But just like my assistant, or let's say you and I were collaborating on a project, and Mark, I walk into your office and say, hey, we're going to work on this project together. I tell you what it is, and I turn around and walk away, and you're like, hey, can I ask you a question? Nope, nope, don't ask me any questions. Don't want to do with it. And you're not going to be able to deliver because you don't know what I want. On
mhm.
the other hand, if you go, hey, can I ask you a couple questions? I go, sure. And I answer those. You're going to gain much more knowledge about the project and what my intentions were. And you're going to be able to deliver a much better result. AI is no different.
I love that. Well, and yeah, I think that's the big difference between AI and traditional programs because I try, tell people like don't treat AI like your standard software because your standard software has specific parameters, specific functions, and specific ways you can interact with it in order to do the thing you're trying to do. But with AI, like you could just say, I don't understand this. Please define it so I could figure it out. Or, just ask it anything about how it should
Hmm.
operate and it'll just tell you. And,
Absolutely.
so in that regards, have you found a good way to kind of explain AI in a way that people could grasp easily?
I look at it like hiring an employee. I really try as a business owner to look at it as a team member. And no, I'm not trying to personify it and say that it's cognizant and it's
Person.
got, the ability to think,
An
because it
AI
doesn't.
employee that
Yeah,
there was a
it's not
firm that tried
sentient.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not sentient, but the ability that I have to be able to do that and be able to ask it questions and get responses back in really in any industry is amazing. I literally right before our podcast, I was over at my church helping them set up a podcast of all things,
Mm.
and they were asking a couple questions about social media, and I'm like, well, I'm not really a social media expert, but I have this bot, this persona that I've trained in ChatGPT. Let's ask it what we should do to promote your upcoming podcast. And we typed it in real quick, and 30 seconds later, and everybody's like, that worked. Oh my gosh, that's really good. And I'm like, the beauty is once you take just a few minutes, like an employee, to train it on the basics, tell it who you are. It knows my name, it knows my email address, it knows my phone number, it knows my style, it knows that, I do have ADD and that I
Mm.
tend to be very direct and I don't beat around the bush and that I have a weird sense of humor. And it pulls all of that together. And now when I ask it to write an email for me or a social media post for me, or even for that matter, to create a SOP, something that I know is incredibly important, I need standard operating procedures, but as an ADD entrepreneur, I can never get through an entire SOP, certainly to write the darn thing. Now I can just give it a bullet list and go, I need to create an SOP. It needs to do the following things. Please create this. And it with just a little bit of information, it can get us 90 to 95% of the way there. And I think that's probably the other thing to answer your question. Don't expect perfection. We don't hire an
Mm.
employee and expect them to be perfect. We expect them to be really good. And if we maintain that with AI and go, just because it's a computer, it's not like we're doing an Excel formula and there's only one answer.
Mm.
We're actually, it's been trained on lots of data. Let's just take a look at the library. You can go to the library today if it still exists in your city. And if you remember the books that used to be there, like are behind me, you could literally go and find books that were on one side of a topic and on another side of the topic. And the problem is that AI has been trained on both of those books, but nobody's told it which one to believe, which is
Mm.
probably good. I'm glad nobody did that. But now when you're asking it for information, it has both the pro and the con. And so you've got to say, I'm on the pro side or I'm on the con side so that it knows which book or books or references it should be using to support what you want. Because if not, it's going to go straight down the middle and be boring as all get out.
No, and then that's a great point too. And I love the entire concept of treating it like an employee, which is, a little touchy. I have found that, since we
It
started
is.
promoting the academy, where it's kind of like some people are just anything that says AI, they're instantly angry and turned off and willing to take the time to give you an angry face on whatever post you're doing, which I kind of found shocking because I didn't think there was that much animosity towards, helpful tech. But have you seen the same thing where basically some people are
Yeah,
just no go?
I think it's, there, like every issue, there's two sides to every issue. And there's those people out there like me that see just a world of opportunity with AI and get excited about it. You're in that camp. And, I love the things that you're doing through the AI Branding Academy to promote the same things we're talking about, different words, but exact same things. And yet you've got people on the other side of it. I was just talking to a client yesterday and, doing a consulting project for a client to help them. And she told me, she goes, I know I'm dragging my feet on this. And I'm like, can you talk to me about that? And nobody else was on the call. And she goes, this is working far better than I anticipated. And I'm afraid I'm going to get fired as soon as the project's done. And I said, but I've talked to the owners extensively. I said, that's not what their plan is. And I don't think it is at all. I said, they want to move you into other roles that you really excel in. This happens to be just a busy work area for you. She goes, yeah, but I probably spend 20 hours a week on that. What am I going to do if I don't have 20 hours a week to spend on this? I'm only going to
Mm.
have 20 hours worth of work. And I said, but imagine if you would from a business owner perspective, not versus, and not trying to say employees have bad perspectives, but I haven't been there for a long time. And I know it's a different way to look at things. As a business owner, I now have a resource that has capacity, that I can use in its best possible skill. And so I can now, instead of having this Ferrari go ahead and get groceries, I can use the Ferrari to go run the curves and have fun and race out on the race course because I was able to go hire a minivan to go get the groceries. But the minivan's not going to have any fun out on the race course. So, now with that employee, I can take those repetitive tasks that really are truly just the same thing happens over and over. And I can add AI in with some automation. And all of a sudden, in many cases, in this particular lady's case, probably take 20 hours a week worth of work off her shoulders. And candidly, it'll probably be done more consistently than it was because AI is not going to get tired. AI is not going to feel sick. AI is not going to be emotional about anything, positive or negative. And as a result, they don't care where in the US we have elections coming up in November. On November 5, AI isn't going to operate differently because their candidate won or lost. It's not going to make any difference. And as a business owner, that's a big deal to me because I don't want my staff, if I'm relying on you to do things and you call in sick for 3 days, you just totally screwed up the schedule. And AI is not going to do that. And so, it's like when you're talking about the frameworks that you talk about and the way to train the avatars, that to me is when you combine that with automation is where businesses can look for those repetitive tasks, and we all have them. And we can then train an AI model to go, here's how we handle these repetitive tasks. Here's the rules to follow. We're really training the exact same way that we would train our team to do that. The difference is instead of paying a team member to do all the boring work repeatedly, we can now use that employee to focus on the skills they actually have. And even if I can only get, say, 10 extra hours out of that employee that I just saved 20, she's going to be happier because she's not as stressed. She's going to have more time. I can now maybe do something that nobody ever wants to talk about. I might actually be able to let them do some development work and train and expand their horizons to even bring more value to my organization because they're able to leverage their skill and experience.
Oh man, that's such a good answer. Because a lot of people they're so scared of it, like, oh, it's going to take my job. And I always tell people it's taking the robot work away that humans shouldn't have been doing in the first place because of the reasons you're saying.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
boring, it's not creative, it's literally soul sucking. And I think a lot of people, have had their jobs for so long that they don't even recognize it anymore as like,
Yes.
yeah, you're going brain dead when you're doing these things. And that's not good for your health. It's not good for your productivity and stuff that requires your attention. And honestly, you don't want to do it. I always quote
Right.
the statistic that about half of all Americans hate their job. And I'm like, you're complaining about something you hate.
We have an amazing limited time offer that you won't want to miss. Introducing the Build Your Brand Pillars course from AI Branding Academy, your gateway to mastering both traditional branding and AI-powered marketing strategies. With this course, you'll gain invaluable skills in creating strong brand foundations that stand out in today's competitive market. Perfect for innovation leaders like you. Don't wait. Take advantage of this special offer before it's gone. Head to aibranding.academy.
Do you understand about keeping something you
Yes.
hate? Why? Why would you do that? And then taking it a step further, where you say, like, I love how you said, like, now they can do the stuff where they're, actually producing or they're innovating or they're doing the fun part of business. I also say, businesses, don't be afraid to just give them that time off too, because if you really want,
100%. Well, again,
that would
just
huge difference.
if I'm already paying for it and now I can save it and they're going to be again in a better mood, do I really care if they turn around and grab a book off the bookshelf? Or do I really care if they take a slightly longer lunch and I end up with a better lifestyle? Because now I'm becoming the employer that everybody wants to work for because my employees aren't working and trying to squeeze 50 hours worth of work into 40. They're now trying to squeeze 35 into 40. And wow, that's pretty easy. It fits automatically. I don't have to squeeze it.
Oh no, and I think it really fits with the new generation of workers, Gen Z, and then who knows what the heck Gen Alpha is going to do. Those guys are nuts.
Yeah, I haven't
But
figured that one out yet either.
oh man, but Gen Z, specifically, they are very careful with their time. They're not really interested in like excessive resources where it's kind of like,
Right.
well, my cell phone's this much and my car is this much. And so I only need to work 10 hours a week. Like, I've heard
Yeah.
people say that forever. I'm like, you know what? Before I was pretty offended by it because I'm, old school and 100-hour work weeks and stuff like I'm trying to be better now, but but I'm still like having to adjust my mindset of like, hey, what if you didn't work so much? Would you be more
Right.
productive when you worked? And I'm finding that you are, and AI is fun
Well,
too.
yeah, I mean, even going back to a time none of us want to remember. I mean, I will remember in March of 2020 when we got the call in the US here that everybody's going home, at least in Michigan where I'm at. Everybody's going home tomorrow. Nobody's coming into the office. And we had an office at the time with 15 employees, not a big company, but we literally went around and like, all right, pack everything up on your desk. You're going home. And my wife and I ran an agency at the time. And I remember going into my wife's office and go, this is going to kill us because there's no way people are going to get work done when they're at home. And I mean, truly, not that I didn't trust my team. We had a great team. I just assumed if you're at home all day long, you're not going to get anything done. And we were amazed, and still 4 years later are somewhat amazed, that productivity actually went up because a ton of stressors like commuting were gone. Having to make sure they had the latest clothes or the latest styles to impress everybody in the office was gone. Having to go, oh crap, somebody brought bagels last week. I need to bring donuts this week. And even thinking about that, not that it mattered, but things that we think about, all of that went away and the attitudes got better. Not that they were bad, but they got even better. Productivity went up and everybody was more relaxed to the point that literally last year we closed all of our offices and everybody now works remote because most of the people that went remote never wanted to come back in the first place. They were like, no, this is good. And as long as work was better, what do we care? And I think AI is that next step. It's really amplifying that times 10 or 100 of what we could do there.
Ah, I love that. Well, the funny part though is that I think AI would actually help, encourage people to have better relationships too. Because if you take away
Absolutely.
all those things and now you're like, hey, you just have to talk to people, like I think the connections will be a lot better because we're not so tired. It's draining work, and that's even for like I do creative work, and so I always talk about articles, and you see some stuff
Hmm.
online where it's just like, oh, an AI written article isn't an article. And I always tell people it's like, no, it is. If it's your ideas, that's no different than telling your assistant to write the article based on the things you want it to communicate, except now you can just own your writing
100%.
style, and so it's even better.
Yeah, but the benefit now with AI, I don't have to tell my assistant to do it because I can faster than I could tell my assistant to do it. I could have AI do it for me. And now my assistant's got more time to pick up the balls in other areas of my life that make what I do more productive, that make, again, maybe it's just making me less stressed in the process. That's all good because that rising tide, that when everybody has more time, everybody's stress goes down and everybody's happier. And I believe that yields to a better work product, more efficient work and everything else. And, I'll admit, I'm not one of those naysayers. I don't think AI is taking everybody's jobs. Do I think there will be people that lose their jobs because of AI? Yeah. When the internal combustion engine came out, I live in a community that has a lot of Amish. And I've always said for years, when the internal combustion engine came out, the buggy whip manufacturers, most of them closed down. We don't have any buggy whip factories where I'm at. Now, there may be a guy that does it around me because I've got a lot of Amish with horses and carriage. But you know what? Those same people that used to make buggy whips now moved in and started making engines or making other things. There were new jobs that were higher paying that did, and we're going to see that same thing with AI. We're going to see new opportunities that, Mark, you and I, even though we try to, probably can't fully imagine today, that will probably be existing as early as next year, that people will be able to move into. And those jobs, again, will be less stressful. They'll be higher productivity. They'll be higher paying. And people aren't going to, like you said, they're no longer going to care about the fact that, well, yeah, I used to spend 20 hours a week doing stuff I hated, because now maybe they're going to spend 5 hours a week doing stuff they hate and 35 doing stuff they like.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, and I think a lot of people have that feeling towards like, oh, lost jobs. Like that's the real tragedy here, where it's kind of like, no, us trying to save jobs for things that don't make sense. that's a tragedy. And so that's why it's kind of like,
Exactly.
that's why with all the like, subsidies when things don't go wrong, I was talking about cave cheese. Have you heard that at one
I
point
have not. No, you got to tell
in
me
the
about that one.
90s, I think it was like the 80s or 90s, the dairy industry was going to go under because they overproduced cheese. And so what
Oh,
the
yes.
government did
Yes.
was they bought millions of pounds of cheese. And since it was more than the market could actually use, they put it into these caves for storage. And now, if you're wondering why, like, I don't know specifically, but Domino's cheese is not that great, it's probably because it's like 20 or 30 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, the government had to get their money back out, so they sold it as cheese, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's but the fact of the matter is, like, if there are positions and they can be replaced by a dumb robot, they weren't positions that you wanted in the first place, and you
Yeah,
have
that's
better
not
things to do.
valuable work. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And
Or
humans,
maybe not valuable, but it's not rewarding work.
no, well, it doesn't use any kind of skill set. It's kind of like I think that the biggest opportunity with AI is that the opportunity to one, learn things that you never learned or never learn. I mean, it may have been just because you don't have time to do it. And so now you can. And then two, you're going to have more time in general because you're not doing all the I call it the being a human switchboard operator, where it's like, okay, let me go to this app and now put the
Hmm.
information into this app and then take that information and put it into this app. And I'm like, no, we're terrible at that. And it's super boring. Like, let the robots do it. With all that said,
100%.
what would you say, for small business owners, like, okay, you've convinced me, I'm open to AI, I'm open to getting rid of the robot work. What platforms, like, what would you say are the top platforms you usually recommend if somebody's like getting started with AI?
Well, most everybody's heard of ChatGPT, and it's a great place to start. I could argue pros and cons of it all day long, as opposed to some of the others. The best advice I'd give is that there's really a couple of major models out there. Pick one of them and start with that. You can use ChatGPT. You could use Claude, which fewer people are familiar with, but is also very good. You could use Gemini from Google. I have my favorites in there, but it really doesn't matter. They're all good. To me, it reminds me. I remember going to statistics class, and they showed this graph, and you know, one bar was really short, and one bar was medium, and one bar was way high. And they're like, "Well, which one do you think is better?" And I'm like, "Well, obviously the one with the high bar. They had the better." It's like a customer service review. Then they zoomed out to show the whole graph, because what they didn't show is that all you were seeing was like a 5% thing. So one of them was at 81%, one was at 82%, and one was at 85%. But when you just see from 80 to 85%, it looks like one's a lot better.
Mhm.
Now, when you zoom out and go, oh, well, they're all pretty good. There's just a little bit. That's, I think, where we're at with AI models now. It's like going to buy a car. Some people want a Dodge, some people want a Ford, some people want a Chevy, some people want a Honda, some want a Toyota. At the end of the day, they're all going to get us to the grocery store. They're all going to take us on our trips. Yes, we can argue till we're blue in the face, but we all have friends that drive different brands and they don't call us every day for a ride. So all the cars are pretty good. We have our preferences, absolutely. And I think AI is the same way. But I would pick one of those three, learn it well. If you're not sure, make it easy. Just go with ChatGPT. And I'll tell you, if you're a business owner, don't be cheap. It's $20 a month to get all the features. Shell out the $20 a month. It will be the best investment you make as far as time savings and productivity that you'll make this year. It's simple. Just spend the $20. Don't debate about it.
Love that. No, well, and I always say the same thing. I'm like, even if you're just going to try it for a month, like cancel at the end of the month, but go with the
Yeah.
real version. You'll find out or not. And I love how you just recommend that the big players, because that's the same thing I do. Because honestly, I don't know how long everything's going to be around, and there is going to be, a consolidation of a lot of these small AI companies that are doing redundant work that the big people do. So if you're going to learn something, learn the big platforms. Now, with that
Yeah.
said, what do you think is the best way for people to go around? Because people will throw around the term prompt engineering a lot, but is
Yeah,
there? I'm always like, that's not a thing. It's just typing words.
exactly.
How do you recommend people, kind of just some tips to get the most out of their first use?
Well, I want to first encourage people not to fall for this moment you start using AI or Facebook hears you talking about it on your phone. You're going to start getting messages and you're going to start getting ads for buy my prompt list of 387 prompts for whatever industry you're in. Doesn't matter. They exist and people are going to sell them. Don't buy them. I'm not saying they're bad. You and I both create prompts and share them. You've got some great prompts in your magazine, by the way, and it's a great way to learn. But if I compiled all of these prompts and I have 387 prompts to go through and I go, I just want to write an email. It's going to take me longer to find the prompt and optimize it than it would just to write the email in the first place without AI. So don't buy the big lists. Find a good prompt you like, save it. That's great. But I encourage people communicate with it much like you would be texting. So it'd be like if we were going to plan a lunch and say, let's go meet for lunch. I wouldn't just text you and go, Mark, let's do lunch, and trust that you would know the date, the time, and the location that I wanted to go to. I'd probably say, let's do lunch. How about this day, this time, in this restaurant? And then you go, no, I don't want to go to that restaurant because I want something different, and maybe that won't work. How about this day? And we'd go back and forth. We'd have a conversation. And that's really what people need to do with AI as well. You need to give it relevant information, and you need to then ask it follow-up questions. So if it gives you a bad response, go, that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for this. It'll reconfigure. And probably the biggest one, again, is just remember, my tip may not be applicable to everybody. Ask it whatever you want it to do, and then say, and please ask me any questions you have.
No.
Because just adding that to the end of any prompt, write a blog post. Please ask me any questions you have. Well, who do you want it to be written to, and who's your audience, and what are we writing about? It'll then ask you all the questions it needs to write a good response for you. Not great, but good. As you get better, you'll then learn idiosyncrasies. It's like working again with a team member. The first week they're on, we're not sure if they're going to work out. We're maybe excited, maybe not. I don't know, man, they've got some weird habits. Oh, I just don't know. But then after a year, we're like, man, I don't know what I'd do without them on the team. And AI is going to be that same way, and just expect it to work that. But talk to it like you would a team member, and I think you'll find it works really well.
No, and I think that's excellent advice, and it's a good way to get out of that traditional software mindset that I mentioned earlier, where it's like, don't use it like you use Facebook or Google. It's
right.
It's more sophisticated than that. And if you simplify it to the point where it's just like, well, it's not doing the exact same thing I told it to, and it's like you didn't even try to go deeper with it, then it's going to be limited, and you're going to be one of those people that says like, oh, it just doesn't work for me. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
You don't work for it. Needs more input.
Again, it's about communications. Every relationship we have, and yes, you're going to have a relationship of sorts with AI. Every relationship depends on good communication, and you need to, whether that's your spouse, or your kids, or anybody else, you've got to have decent communication, and you need to do that with AI as well. I'm one of those weirdos because I was raised this way. I ask it to please do this, and I occasionally say thank you. That was great, not because I need to. It's just the way I talk. It's what I do. But it also, my wife was laughing the other day because I was using the voice mode in the car, and she goes, "I now know why you like using AI so much." And I'm like, "Why?" And she goes, "Every time you ask it a question, it compliments you." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's a good point."
That's so cool. But I totally believe that too. Because honestly, if you let's look at the capacity issue that a lot of people don't realize, but like AI has a capacity issue with both
absolutely
and processing. But if I was a developer and wanted to be cheeky while also increasing efficiency, I could tell the machine to prioritize people that are nice to it. Like that would be a parameter. Easy peasy.
Yeah. And if you're worried that we're going to have Terminator type AI someday, I'm not, for the record. But if you are, you might as well be nice to it because it'll remember.
Oh yeah, one of them will.
Yeah, exactly.
Defend you from the other one. Well, this has been great, Jonathan. I'll definitely have to have you back on to get into some more specific applications. And you're posting all the time. Where can people learn more about you and your awesome AI content?
Well, thanks for having me on. I love talking AI, as you know. It's super simple. Just go to my website at jonathanmast, that's mast.com/linktree. And I've got ways to get in touch with me, ways to join my free Facebook group. We've got almost 200,000 entrepreneurs in that group right now. Anything like that. There's free resources. Just, jonathanmast.com/linktree.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to hearing you speak again, and we'll reconnect really soon.
Yeah, good luck on your event in Austin, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you so much for listening. This has been the AI Branding Podcast, where we talk everything content, marketing, branding, and AI. If you want more content like this, please subscribe.